Lewis Art for the Ring Magazine, joined today with Ring Magazine royalty, former Cruiserweight Ring Magazine champion and multiple-time cover star, David Haye, here in London. David, good to see you. How's things? How are you?
Not bad. All is well. Feeling good. Excited for fight night coming up soon. So, it's a good place to be in boxing with everyone finally finding each other.
Yeah. Just before we do start, I guess me introducing their Ring Magazine champion and Ring cover star must be a nice thing to when you look back.
As a kid, you always look at the Ring Magazine. It's always got your heroes on there. And when you did the cover, I did the covering since 2008. You know, when I was a unified champion with a Ring Magazine belt, #1. I got that belt, and that's it. And I got the cover. I remember that's how I knew. Yep, you've made it. You've done what you said you was going to do, and you got that belt, the Ring Magazine belt.
Yeah, that's good to hear. But we'll touch on Saturday night. Only, I guess, we can see the O2 from Canary Wharf. But Fabio Wardley takes on Joseph Parker in an interesting, intriguing matchup on Saturday night. How do you look here and how do you break it down on Saturday?
I think Wardley's going to do something. Wardley needs to do something in which he's never done before. You know, he's never fought anyone on this level as Parker. You know, if you look at Parker's last 3 victories, Bakoli, Zili Zhang, the giant Chinaman. You've got Deontay Wilder, one of the biggest punchers in boxing history, and he's fought them all back to back. That's one of the toughest lineups you could ever have. You know, all 3 of those were probably the last 10 years boogeyman, the guys you don't really want to fight because they're just a big problem. And he's found a way to get victory over all 3 in a row. And here he is fighting another dangerous young gun. You know, Wardley. I've always liked his energy. No amateur pedigree. I think he had like 4 white collar fights. So he's he's had to learn on the job, and he's done a great job. To be honest, he's really sort of puts his shots together. He's very awkward, tough, great chin, bags of heart, and keeps coming. In his last fight, you know, it wasn't really going his way, and he found the equaliser. He did that thing that all great fighters have, is that when it's not going your way, you can flip the switch and flip it. And he's made sure that, you know, he keeps his punch power to that final bell. And it's going to be interesting for Parker how he's going to handle it. Is he going to come in here and pressure him, or is he going to keep it long and box and counter punch the more inexperienced fighter? You know, Parker's a great boxer. You know, look at his fights against Carlos Takam and Andy Ruiz Jr., quality fighters that he's used his boxing skills and ability. Or Deontay Wilder, kept it long, kept it clean. He had a structure, a strategy that he implemented to perfection. And, you know, it's going to be really hard for Wardley to bridge that gap in skill since his last fight.
For yourself, David, you mentioned there about Wardley having that equaliser.
Yeah.
You know, Wardley, I guess, you know, yourself and him are different fighters, but you know, you had that equaliser as well.
It helps. I'll tell you that.
How much does that help? Would you say?
I wouldn't have been world champion if I didn't have it. Honestly, there was times where if it wasn't for that punch to get me out of trouble, I would have stayed in trouble. You know, when you got the style that I've got, you have to get them out early. And of my 28 professional victories, 26 were by knockout. And, you know, I focused on a knockout. I wanted a knockout. Why do 12 rounds when you can do 2 or 3? You know, so I'm like, get the job done early, get home. You know, less brain damage. Yeah. And he has that same power, but I don't think he's got the experience and knows how to avoid what's coming his direction. You know, he's had some face damage from the shots that he's taken. And I don't think, looking at his last fight, punch evasion was sort of top of the list of his priorities going into that fight. But it's going to need to be against Parker, who's a sharpshooter, who him and Andy Lee would have studied the hell out of Wardley's movement patterns and what habits he has, what he does with his feet when he finishes punching and where his head is. And Parker will have something neat and tidy planned. So I'm definitely favouring Parker for the victory. Yeah, that's fine.
Is it? I guess though, when you are facing a puncher, like how hard is it for 12 rounds to be switched on? Like Fabio always says this. It always says this thing, and I think it come from Wilder, where it was like, you know, a puncher has to only be good for 1 second, where you know, Parker has to be ready for 12 rounds. Like, how hard is it to navigate around that style?
However hard it is, he's done it in his last 3 fights.
Of course.
Look at Zhang. He can take anyone out at any time. Massive puncher, and he got tagged by it, and he got on his bike and he found a way to win that fight. He outclassed the big man. Mike Bacoli didn't give an opportunity, went out there and just stuck it straight on him. And Wilder, he showed against Wilder, he can keep his concentration. He doesn't have that massive knockout punch, but he doesn't need it because he's got the skills, he's got the durability, the toughness. He's been around, he's seen it, he's done it. And, you know, this is another, this is probably on paper the easiest of his last 3 fights. If you look at the resumes of his last 3 opponents versus who Wardley's beaten, is Parker overlooking Wardley looking at that Usyk fight, or is he just live and die by this fight? He's put everything into training camp. I'm assuming he's a consummate professional, so he's going to be at his very best on Saturday night at the O2. But that's what makes heavyweight boxing interesting. One shot from either man can change it, particularly Wardley, because he's got that freak show power that when he hits people, they stay hit. Yeah,
you mentioned Oleksandr Usyk there, and I wanted to speak about the future with him. And we know he sort of not turned down, but wasn't really welcoming of a clash with Moses Itauma, who spoke especially with his eyes on Saturday night. Like, what would you like to see the future for Oleksandr Usyk at this point?
If Oleksandr wants to continue boxing, he's free to do so. If he decided to hang his gloves up today and say, I'm not boxing anymore, I'd stand up and applaud him. All-time great, fantastic. But if he's got more to give in his heart and he wants to do it, he loves the training camps, he feels he's got more. I don't know what more there is to do, as he's won all the belts a couple of times now in both the weight divisions. Maybe fighting 2 champions on one night or something. I don't know how much further he can take boxing. But if he is going to fight someone, the winner of this fight on Saturday would be a great person to fight in regards to Parker of having such a tough road over the last few years, fighting the danger men in the division and beating them concisely. And here he is again doing the same thing. So the winner of this fight should definitely get a shot against Usyk.
Would a Usyk-Itauma fight interest you?
Not right now, it wouldn't.
Yeah.
Not right now, it wouldn't. I think maybe Itauma's too new. I'm not saying he can't win. He possibly could win. But I think it's a bit early to fight someone so in their peak. And Usyk has shown time and time again, he can rise to the occasion. But it's not that much for Usyk fighting a 20-year-old who hasn't beaten any big names yet. Dylan White's the biggest name on his record by fight. Obviously, he won in 1 round, but it's not a massive marquee name or a huge fight or someone who's worked their way up the rankings like a Parker has.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about a few heavyweights as well. Former adversary of yours, Derek Chisora, nearing the end of his career now.
Nearing the end, right? He's there. He's
almost there.
He's got 1 fight, he's 50.
Yeah.
Fight 50. People didn't think he'd get to fight 50. They thought he'd be washed up by now, but off the strength of 4 victories on the spin. And here he is again. We've got the Dylan White 3. They've agreed the terms. I think it was like 50-50 and the winner gets 60%, loser 40%. Extra bit of spice for the fight. You got Dylan White obviously losing to Itauma in the last fight, but this reminds me of like Gatti Ward, where no matter what stage these guys fought each other, it's always going to be even. It's always going to be drama filled. The hype is going to be through the roof. And what a great way for Derek to finish his career. And he obviously wants to finish it on a 5-fight winning streak. And Dylan White, I'm sure, will have other ideas about that. So, I'm looking forward to it. I found last night, I was at Pride of Britain last night. I was sitting with Derek and he was super excited.
Yeah, as you say, obviously the Dillian White trilogy. It was always talked about, especially after the first 2 fights. Of how
it was so good.
The
fights were they were classic fights. If you haven't seen it, go onto YouTube. What Dylan White, Derek Chisora, 1 or 2, they're both great fights. Yeah,
but especially at this point in your career, where he bows out on a great streak as well. He's had so many ups and downs in his career, and I guess you've been a part of that as well.
Yeah.
How incredible would it for him to bow out on such a high?
That'd be perfect. It'd be perfect. You'd never have thought a few years back that he'd still be boxing, let alone filling out arenas. He's a real fan favourite. Everyone loves Derek, and he always brings the hype, brings the banter, and of his delicious TV as well, getting out, asking people all the dodgy questions. It's hilarious. So everyone, what a great way to to bow out of the boxing game, fight 50 against Dylan White in a trilogy fight.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
From you being retired now, like, how do you find it, I guess, being around like your old rivals like a Chisora now, and other people like Fury? I don't know how much time you'd have spent around him, but how do you find that now you are retired?
It's nice. It's like boxers, you're hard pushed to find an arsehole boxer. When the cameras aren't rolling, when you're on your own, and I've never really been around a fighter who's been a right arsehole.
Yeah.
They're all nice guys. They're all fighters. We're all the same. We all do the same sport. We all love the same thing. So I've always got on well with all the. Me and Shannon Briggs have had some banter over the years, and we see each other. It's all love. It's we're both in the same sport, doing the same things, and it's nice to be retired and sit back and watch the young guy. That's why I like watching Moses Itauma come through. He's 20 years old now. He's right at the beginning, and he's potentially not that far away from world title fight. So the future of British boxing is looking super strong. Yeah,
just on a town with that, like, how far do you think he can go, especially with next steps? I know people liken him to a fight on Filip Hrgovic, who you've done rounds with before, and I know Usyk as well, but that's obviously sort of in the rearview mirror. But how far do you think Itauma can go?
On potential, lots of people have had potential in the past and never lived up to it. But if he stays on the same path, if he lives the life, if he listens to his coach, if he's able to get the fights, because the tough thing at the moment is he's a bit too good for his own good. Where fighting a 20-year-old for a fighter who. Fighters just don't want to get beaten by a 20-year-old knocked out. People don't want what Dylan White received the other night. So they're asking for silly money that doesn't make the fights doable. So unfortunately for Itauma, he's kind of sitting on the sidelines a little bit. But if he's patient, chill, Frank will guide him exactly as he needs to go. But patience is the key for him at the moment. Doing hard work, getting good quality sparring partners behind closed doors, making sure he's developing, making sure he's learning. Lessons are learned ideally in sparring and not on fight night. So if he can spend money on good quality sparring partners to test him and push him in sparring, when those opportunities do come up, he'll be then ready for it.
Yeah. A last few from myself, and looks like 2025 will be the first year since Fury and AJ haven't fought in that calendar year. I think the first time since like 2008. So a long time. Where do you think that the future lies, I guess, for both of those fighters? If they do end up fighting each other.
I think both of their futures. I think both of their legacies. They both got great legacies. Independent of each other, AJ Olympic champion, two-time ever champion, Tyson Fury, the Klitschko fight, the fights, the 3 fights with Wilder, epic battles that are sort of etched into boxing history. But I think it would be a real sad state if we get a sort of Riddick Bowe, Lennox Lewis thing where it's like we'd love to see this fight happen. It just never transpired. So I think for both guys, let them have a couple of fights, and then at some stage just book a stadium and give everybody the answers they want to know. Who is better out of Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua? I'd like to know. I'd really like to know who's living the life, who's going to put the training camp in, who's going to hold up, because they both had a go against Usyk and both lost twice. Okay, you can fight each other now, and let's see who's best at it. Used to now. Yeah,
well, let's hope to see it. And before I do let you go, I've got to ask you a question. We're currently doing a thing on the ring of current ring champions against previous. Yourself being a previous cruiserweight champion, how do you think prime David Haye would fare against the current Ring Magazine champion, Opetaia?
Well, it's a tough one. That he's a right handful. I've watched him coming through, and he's a nightmare. I really wouldn't like to fight him. Yeah. He's like super sharp, and he's tough, and his punch angles are real useful. I think he can be the 4th guy to be cruiserweight champion and heavyweight champion. I think he's got the capabilities to do that. And I didn't think there'd be another one after Usyk, but I'm watching him thinking he could move up to heavyweight like right now if he wanted to. And it'll be a problem he would probably give Usyk a tougher fight than everyone else, really. Okay. I think he knows that as well. So I would have won, obviously.
Yeah.
But I would have had to have been on my very, very best day. And, you know, I really respect him, like what he's doing, like the way he wants to fight the best. He just wants the toughest fight, best fight. He wants to prove himself. I love that energy. And I'm looking forward to seeing his future. But I'm positive it will have a very exciting heavyweight campaign in it. As long as he keeps the defence sharp, he'll be fine.
Yeah, good stuff. Look, David, always a pleasure. Appreciate the time to speak to me. And all the best. Catch up soon, mate. Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
Cheers. Thanks.